I've got 10 gentlemen about to come in, and all of them are carers for their wives. They all are involved in caring for beloved women who have dementia. So can you clap them as they come in?
This is a group of men that have got together because we felt it was important for them to share their experiences about caring for partners or a parent with dementia. It's worked marvellously well. They're a great supportive group of each other. They learn so much from each other. And it's been a real privilege to, sort of set this group up for them.
What's your name?
David, Julie.
Hello, David. Yeah, really good to meet you. Just tell us a little bit about your wife.
She's had dementia for 4 or 5 years, 75-year-old now. Very lethargic. But I'm working with, she has a package, a level 2 package, and I'm working with Baptist Care to get a friend, not someone from Baptist Care immediately, to get a friend of hers in her 60s whose mother has dementia and is a nursing home, to be her one-on-one carer. It hasn't happened before, apparently, according to some of the service providers. So I'm hopeful that it'll work out.
This group you're part of, what does it offer you?
It's humour. We share similar problems, but it's humour and it's support, and support from Anne. We get everything that's on in Sydney that's associated with caring for people comes through her. So whether it's applicable to us individually or collectively, it's there for us to use. But it's just the support.
Am I right in thinking that you think infinite patience is important for carers?
Absolutely.
So tell us about how on earth do you achieve infinite patience?
I don't want this to get out of the room, but males lack a little bit of patience by comparison to the fairest sex. Patience and nurturings. So when we get to our 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, one of our members is in his 90s looking after his wife. Can't be here today, unfortunately. It's patience. And my tactic, when you don't get a response immediately, is just walk away. Yeah. Don't argue. Just walk away, come back a couple of minutes later, and maybe you'll be successful.
Isn't that true before you get dementia? Like, wouldn't you call that a marital skill?
It is. I've acknowledged my impatience all my life. But now I've learned something.
I have to go because I've got to interview 9 other people, but may I just ask, what is your working career?
I was a war resources engineer.
An engineer. Fantastic. Look, it's lovely to meet you. Would you please give David a warm round of applause? Do you mind? Thank you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Kumar, and I live with my mum, looking after her. And on the way here, I just realised the similarities to that show, Mother and Son, with Ruth Cracknell and Gary McDonald. And
are you Gary McDonald or the dentist?
Well, my brother's the dentist. He's actually a medical specialist, but he's not in this health district, so it's okay.
Look, listen, what would you share with someone who is either already caring for someone with dementia or may in the future, something you've learnt that's helped you cope and hopefully blossom?
Look, I don't know if this resonates with everybody, but a lot of it is about me and my own ego. And I'm in charge here and you do as I say. And that's the bit that I need to get under control and manage. And if I can manage myself, then dealing with someone else becomes that much more easier, if that makes sense.
And how do you manage your ego?
Well, someone also mentioned the spiritual side, and that's been important for me, the belief systems that come with it, and why am I doing this, and the inner joy that comes with it, if you like, the intrinsic aspects. So those come into play.
Look, thank you. I sent some trigger questions before to the gentleman. One of them was, what is the key challenge and what are your sources of joy? And some have struggled with that. In fact, there was someone here, George, is George Thompson here? I'll come over to you, George. Would you please give Kumar a round of applause?
Wait a minute. What did I say that where I committed myself?
Yeah, no, don't worry, because you can pull out of this commitment at any time. But, I can tell this group's fun. Look, you know, as I understand it, when you were discussing the questions I'd sent ahead and that idea, is there is there joy in this, caring for someone that you love, that it was a hard question because there are so many challenges. What are your thoughts about that, as well as the challenges? Is there a level of satisfaction?
Yes, there is a level of satisfaction. It depends on how much you put into it, what sort of results you get, to see your partner or wife, how happy they become at certain times. But as far as joy goes, there's really no joy for me. Satisfaction, we just mentioned.
Yes. What's the satisfaction?
When you give her something, when she's depressed and introverted, I might go up to the shop, bring home a French pastry. As soon as you provide her something that she actually loves, and she loves sweet things, her whole attitude changes. I'm a pretty reasonable cook. I make lemon meringue pie. She loves lemon meringue pie. Actually, New South Wales Health put on cooking classes, and I actually attended them for a few months. So there's lots out there for people like me to try and support when you actually don't know what to do initially. And especially with this group here, these fellows here, you listen to their issues and you say, hey, that might work for me, when they work out how to do it. Yeah. And then Anne straightens the ship because we get out of control sometimes. Yes. And all the avenues that she provides for us, Centrelink, they all come out and they discuss what's available for us, all the different facilities.
How did you find out about Anne and her group?
She persisted on sending me emails, come and join the group, come and join the group. And I thought...
What convinced you?
Pardon?
What convinced you in the end?
My daughters lent on me.
Can I just
three
say,
daughters.
Julie, I think I knew George... Oh, sorry.
I've dared to give her a microphone because I trust her.
I think I'd met George quite a few years ago, just after Gwen was diagnosed, and it probably took you 3 years
6, 7 years now.
before you came along to anything. So, but now he's one of our greatest.
6 or 7 years. Could someone... That's not me, is it?
It was me.
That's okay. In any other circumstances, I would have confiscated it and given it to a child protection worker in the Western Division. But for a man caring for his wife with dementia, you just make as many calls as you like.
The other thing was that I'm a 40s, 50s person. I'm 80. Yep. I'm not touchy-feely, and I thought I don't want to go to this group because if I go in there, I'll stick my head in the door, and if they're all sitting around in a circle holding hands, I'm out of there.
Yeah, exactly.
But look at them.
Well, we only hold hands occasionally.
Unfortunately, I've got to move on. Would you give this man a warm round of applause? I've got to come to you because I love your moustache. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is John.
Hello, John. How did you meet this mob?
I was doing it tough when my wife was first diagnosed in 2013, and I realised that I needed some support. I was getting a lot of support from the family, but I needed someone, professional support, and there happened to be a course at the time that Anne was running, which was for both the person with dementia and their carer. I can't remember what it was called, but we attended that, and it was particularly useful, and this sort of flowed on from that course.
When you say, I've got 2 quick questions. You said you were doing it tough. Can you explain that just a bit more?
Okay, my wife and I have been married for 51 years. We have no conversation, none. There is no shared memory. So we can't talk about things we've done and people we've known. We can't talk about family occasions. All of that is gone. That's a huge gap in a relationship. fairly recently, so it wasn't back then, but fairly recently she's become very aggressive and angry, and I'm told by researchers that happens when the disease moves into the frontal lobes. When the disease moves into the back lobes, you get hallucinations and people seeing things. But my wife's has moved into the frontal lobes and she is very angry. 51 years and I get anger. No joy there.
I'm just so sorry. You know, that's such a hard thing.
It's a horrible, horrible disease. And every day, and I do mean day, things change every day. A couple of days ago I discovered she could not open the electric jug to fill it up with water. Same electric jug she's been using for many years. So we're constantly adjusting, and it's a horrible disease. It leaves you with nothing except the shell.
I just want to thank you so much for coming and so much for being so frank. Thank you, John. Thank you.
Excuse me, Julie, could I just add that John was actually one of the inspirations to setting up the men's group, because he came along. Unfortunately, a lot of the other groups that I'm involved in are mainly women. And John, you know, being keen to sort of be involved, came along and was one of only 2 men in a group of about 30 women. And his response to that...
John just gave a sort of guttural groan of despair.
was my inspiration for thinking maybe we need to do something just for the men. So thank you, John.
Thank you so much. Oh, I was just going to ask you your name. Tell them.
I'm a John.
That was
we actually have 4
a
in the
total
group.
coincidence. I can just give you the opportunity to say one thing to this audience. What would you like to say about your experience as a carer?
Experience as a carer? Well, I can say that in the last 4 years, Shirley was diagnosed with the dementia, and we've been at home for those years. But then she had a fall in December last, and as a result of that, she went downhill very quickly. She's had lots of falls, so that's been part of the problem. And
how did that affect you? That she was, because I'm assuming was falling at home.
Well, she had a few falls at home and falls when we're out in the shopping centres, and it was getting very marginal where I was in a position whether I could take her out, and that's part of the issue. Is the issue that I had with her is trying to keep her engaged. That was the big issue, because she used to be a great book reader, but she doesn't read anymore. Things like that. So. Trying to keep her engaged was the difficult thing, so, yeah.
And John, is your wife still the woman you've always known, or has she changed in the manner that we've heard with the other John? Is she still noticeably herself?
Yes. When I say that, she can recognise me, and that's the joy or the beauty of it at the moment, because she is in permanent care now because of that fall. But when I go to see her, she says, my John, and she gets very excited.
Do you mind standing up? And fortunately, his name is not John. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, my name's Norm, and I'm sort of the new boy in the men's group, so I've been to 1 meeting. So don't ask me what happens in the men's group, because I'm the least experienced. But I found my way into the men's group through Concord Hospital when my wife was diagnosed first with dementia and then Alzheimer's. And it was quite ironic, because I used to work in music publishing, and I'd been asked a couple of years before if I could be on a committee to help get music to patients with dementia.
Amazing. And will you are you thinking you might pursue that a bit more now, possibly with the support of this live wire?
Absolutely. And I work with a committee at AMPAL, Music Publishers Associated, and if people want to ask me or talk to me about how we can help get music to patients. That's been a driving force for a couple of years.
Look, thank you so much for agreeing to come after just one meeting. It's amazing. And music, as we know, is such a communicator in all circumstances. So more power to your arm, and I'm sure Anne will help you. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
So Neville, can you tell us a little bit about your wife?
Yes, my wife is 78. We've been married for 50 years. And she self-diagnosed herself with Alzheimer's. She was working at the time taking groups of English people around the country, and it was becoming a bit difficult remembering all the, the computer work and all the rest of it. So she went to a GP, and I went with her. And he said, Lynn, if you were any of the patients in this practice, you'd be the last one I'd expect to have Alzheimer's. Highly organised person, very productive. And anyway, he tested her and he said, there's a bit of a problem, and he sent her to a neurologist who did the MRI and said definitely got dementia. And from there he referred us over to the Prince of Wales Hospital, where she did 3 one-year-long drug trials, which meant monthly visits to the hospital, blood tests, MRIs, both interviewed separately by a psychologist. And it's been a slow process. She was prescribed Aricept. At that time, they used to give you two trials to see whether it was working or not. And then they prescribed it for her, and that seemed to slow it down quite a bit. I didn't realise that until I took over the shopping that we had about 10 years supply of shampoo and 20 years supply of spray and wipe and 50 years supply of salt. So, yeah.
That's good. Unfortunately, because of this time bloody limit, but that's an important message, isn't it? That there are medications, and for some people, they can be immensely beneficial.
Yes, it certainly worked for her. And until 3 years ago, we were still travelling, couldn't do it now. I took her on an 11-day cruise last November just to see how things worked out, and after 11 days in a small cabin, she still didn't know where the toilet was. And at home she can't read, can't write, and not interested in watching TV or listening to the radio. It's very hard to keep her entertained, and she's taken to talking to herself in the mirror, having conversations which are quite...
It's actually good, isn't it? I mean, because it must be so intense for you to be so involved all the time.
It is good because they're happy conversations. She's laughing and smiling and that sort of thing. I was very perturbed about it at first. And, I've been through the stage where she sees cars coming up the hallway or through the lounge room. But basically she's happy. Yeah, she's happy, and in the last 3 years she's had both cataracts done, both eyes, new knee, new hip. And, that was challenging for me in the rehab.
Yeah.
But
Unfortunately, I have to stop, but I actually want to marry all these men. Thank you so much. I need to go, but thank you, Neville. Thank you. Guys, I'm just going to take about 5 minutes of your lunch max, because I think I have 2 more gentlemen to meet, don't I? Do you mind standing up? G'day. You've been listening to all this. What are you thinking as you listen to your fellow mates?
Well, we're all similar. We've got our specific problems. My problem is I firmly believe to be able to cope, you've got to accept a lot of the mammoth changes that are taking place, in my case, with a woman I've been married to for 53 years, where you're asked questions like, are you married? Have you got any children?
Is it a repetitive conversation?
Not all the time. It's becoming more repetitive and more intense. You've got to accept when, in my case, it was mind-blowing when she had a UTI, and then we had delusions, hallucinations, and I didn't know where to turn. And then I found a brochure from Dementia Australia, had a 24-hour hotline, which was absolutely brilliant. Yeah. So it's accepting these changes that are taking place. Her wanting to go to her home. We've lived in the same place for 48 years. And I'm asked, how did you move all the furniture and the pool? You just, I don't know, you come up with all sorts of fibs and things. But
does anything help? Like help you cope with all of this?
years ago it would have been drink, but I don't drink much anymore.
Is that because you feel you're on duty sort of thing with, so that you can't afford to drink too much? You're on duty to care for your wife, that's what I meant.
No, not really. No, I don't know. I'm finding it... Look, I've got someone ringing me, isn't it?
As you know...
I got out of that, I planned that.
I normally am worried, but not worried about it today. This is what's so important. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but what you're describing is such a challenging situation. It was a genuine question, but it sounds to me what's helping you cope is your willingness to be flexible.
Well, and willingness to learn from all the brochures that we receive from Dementia Australia and from the help we get from people like Anne. She's always there to point you in the right direction. And Bonnie, my wife, goes to a wonderful care centre, and I feel selfish about that. That's apparently respite for me, so I can attempt to have a game of golf. But
what's your handicap?
What, mentally, physically?
With golf?
We could go on and on. Also, it's basically the golf clubs, but,
Look, unfortunately, I've got to stop, but you guys are so much fun. Could you please, it's Barry, could you give Barry a round of applause? Now, I've spoken to everyone, but hello, Richard. Can I ask you just a little bit about your wife?
Sure. My wife's a country girl, which presents a few problems. She's lived in the country all her life. I've lived in the country for 55 years, grew up in the city. I was a teacher, went to the country, and now we're back because of my wife's dementia. She doesn't like living in the city. I prefer to be in the country.
And why have you had to come back here?
We have 3 daughters. They all live in Sydney. We have 5 grandchildren. They're all in Sydney. Pressure from the family. Come down here. We can't, if there was a problem, we were 5 hours away. Now we're only 5 minutes away.
Yeah. But that's hard, isn't it? If you're country people, it's hard to be here.
It is hard, especially the traffic.
No, look, it's a bloody nightmare. What's been one of the hardest things as you've endeavoured to support your wife through this, apart from needing to move to the city?
The hardest thing for me is my wife doesn't accept that she's got a problem. She says, like today we came here, she said, I'll stay home. I said, no. You got to treat them like a little kid. It's like having another child at 70 years of age. You've got to say no. All the way here, she's asking questions. Where are we going? What's it on? 5 minutes later, and I'm trying to concentrate because I don't know the roads. Mr. Corner, but that's how it is. She doesn't accept. She doesn't like being she grew up on a isolated farm, so most of the contact she had was with her family. So she doesn't really like strangers coming in, only family. So when the carers come, what's that person doing here? Yes. I don't need any help, so I've got you. Yeah. Which is nice to know.
And Richard,
when you talk about joy, that is the one joy to know that you really wanted and appreciated.
You're sincere about that, aren't you? Yeah, good. Can I just ask you, do you get to the country at all now?
My wife's always saying, what are we doing today? We might go for a drive. I said, it's Sunday. I'm not going for a drive out in these roads on a Sunday. We'll go to Manly. She's always wanting to go to Manly. So we go to Manly and come have something to eat and come home again. But no.
It's not possible now?
No.
Look, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Our time is up and I have taken some of your lunch. Do I have to know someone with dementia to have you in my life? Because I need a lot of signposting. Look, I need to say goodbye to these people. Would you give them a huge round of applause?